Hey, what's up guys? It's I, Mark Yoon, and time for another hopefully exciting video. So what I want to talk to you about today is actually expounding on something that I've seen recently going on in the comments section. Now this definitely happens more often than you would imagine, and it's not that annoying to deal with because I understand the sentiment that people have of wanting new content. So after we found out that we probably weren't going to be getting a Season 3 for Soul Calibur 6, the story speculation started making the rounds about what's going to happen with Soul Calibur 7. So even though this game is at least 2 years out, a lot of people are still starting to throw away by picking up the pieces from the end of Season 2 and things of that nature. I've heard a lot of things of like, what new characters do you think are going to be in it? Do you think they're going to be from other countries, or what other weapons are they going to use? My short answer to that is not many. And I'm going to go into a few of my reasons now. So if you followed my channel before, then you know the kind of expository dialogue that we currently try to hold and express to each other when it's coming to these details. I'm going to try to make you informed while also letting you know that this is my opinion, but we do have track records with these things, so hopefully you stick with me to the end. So when it comes to story, starting from the end of Season 2, spoiler alert if you haven't played Season 2, we did see that Zos Lamel was preparing to train and help the heroes. We also saw Hwang Sung-young's backstory and how in this timeline he became the mystical talisman user. And we see a lot of the inner workings going on behind the scenes. The biggest probably reveal is that a disembodied voice, also known as Algol, is kind of working things behind the scenes. We've also seen certain inklings in the library and museum of Grow's mention, and not Grow, Svi's mentioning, but he happens to be 12 years old during the timeline of Soul Calibur 6, and also the beginnings of Aswell trying to bring out Amy's latent potential to create Viola. Now we've also already seen people like Curtis come back and be inducted into the Swords and Shepherds, which is the new Akatsuki-like anime team that is led by none other than Ishka Oct, and probably co-led by Nightmare, even though Soul Edge has a little bit less to do with this than Ishka Oct seems to have. Now the Swords and the Shepherds are going to be in paired units. I guess whatever complements each other or whatever helps get the mission done. But in these paired missions, that's why I say Akatsuki-like, because we're probably going to see things go on like we did with, Hidan and Kakuzu being complementary to each other's abilities and things like that. So the chances that we have Viola and Svi teaming up, I'm not sure if they're actually going to be on a team. I'm more guessing they're going to be on an opposite team or another part of the Swords and Shepherds, and then they are going to fight together and realize they want to leave the Swords and Shepherds and fight alongside the heroes, and then that's when they realize that they're a good team. That's where I'm getting at with that. Do I think Algol is going to be in this game? No. I think Algol is going to be in the game, but in a tricky way. So one of the many vast problems that people had with Soul Calibur 5 was the fact that when they threw everything at the wall and you give this ultimate personage of Soul Calibur and Soul Edge in deitytical form, you have a god going against a bunch of people with sticks and swords, right? So where does the writing go from there? Now in narrative, it's pretty hard to write yourself out of that, because in order to accomplish a hero's journey in narration, you have to bring the heroes up to the level of the challenge and then surpass it. That way it's a natural progression of how they beat it. There's different ways you can go about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be equaling on power level or power scaling. It could also be things like outsmarting, teaming up, things of that nature. Or even the arrogance of the antagonist being taken full advantage of, which would go into intelligence, I suppose. So Algol is a disembodied voice that we see. We still do not know yet if Algol is aware of the past timeline, and since he was tossed into the astral chaos, maybe that's why his voice is disembodied, maybe he doesn't have a body anymore, or if this is just this timeline's version of Algol. We still do not know if the power of the swords or Algol transcends all of the astral plane, or if the astral chaos is just bringing over bits and portions, such as what happened when Cassandra was lost. But What I think is going to happen is, instead of writing themselves into a corner just in the second game of their new reboot, I'm guessing that they're setting Ishka up for a possession type thing. So Algol is probably going to enter Ishka-Ak's body and fight through her. That's why we saw in season 2 she's using the abilities of other characters as opposed to just like fighting on her own with her own power. Algol, I believe, is going to see that as a way to bring himself into this timeline as his perfect vessel, and so he's going to go in there, try to bring out all of her latent abilities that she has, and become like an edge master type character by using everyone's abilities in one moveset, or switching between them for different movesets. I don't know which one I'm sold on yet, but it's either going to be her or it's going to be Nightmare. But Nightmare is so hinged on the fact that like Siegfried and the Evil Sword and Soul Edge have like this like unspoken perfect unity that that's why he cloned them before. He's kind of obsessed with it, right? So I don't think Algol is going to see that as a perfect opportunity, because we know about the stubbornness that both he and Siegfried both have. So I think it's going to go into Ishka-Ak. It's going to come down to the teams being defeated or overthrown. I think Curtis is going to join our side because of Grow. I think Viola and Spy are going to join our side, or the hero's side, based on disagreements that they have. They're going to be lied to with promises of power or grandeur, or even been manipulated or brainwashed. So that's what we're going to see from that aspect of the story. I think the narration is going to go for a really good portion of this. Now, one thing I do want to make note of, without making this video run too long, is a lot of people keep on... I think they don't understand what a new timeline is, right? So you look at other popular forms of media, like let's say the Spider-Verse, right? And you say, okay, well, all of these existences exist at the same time, right? You could just travel back and forth between them if you have the ability to do so. Therefore, that's how Miles Morales was able to come into our 616 universe, right? The main Marvel universe. So they think that the situation is similar, that the past timeline from Soul Calibur, from Soul Edge and Soul Blade up through Soul Calibur 5 is another universe that is alongside of our universe, but that's not actually the case. So timelines and time streams are different in operation. Time has no bounds, right? So if you have these two times, they're not side by side. They're not parallel to each other like it would with another dimension or a universe. What you have is, we have the previous timeline, something happened to that timeline, and now we have the reboot, which is a new timeline. So even though they coexist in, I guess, the same multiverse, they're completely different timelines. So when people say, oh, well, this game is going to cover the events of Soul Calibur 2 and 3, correct? The answer is incorrect. Soul Calibur 6 was taking what Soul Edge and Soul Calibur did well, and our Soul Blade well, and they expanded upon that. They covered a little bit of things that would have still taken place because of correlation and causation, and then they took what worked from Soul Calibur 1, they expanded on it, built their own story, their own narrative, changed a bunch of the characters, changed a bunch of the events, introduced characters like Grow and Aswell, and now we're branched off into a completely different subset of events. So there is not going to be a Zasalamel turning bad kind of thing, you know. There is not going to be a lot of the same scenarios that we saw play out in 2 and 3's story. It's its own brand new timeline from this point on. And you got to understand, part of the reason why they did that with the narration change is, with all the different directors' visions of different games, a lot of them didn't really coalesce together. They kind of almost feel like some of them are contradictory in nature when it comes to characters' motives or how they're going about their day. A lot of it seemed almost like a villain of the week type scenario. So they want a more streamlined narrative and focus heavily on the characters' stories and how they function within the story and narrative itself. So from now on, we're just going to see a completely new set of events. Maybe some may have hints of what happened before. I think more or less of that's going to be addressed in whatever museum mode or library that we have. I don't think we're going to see much of that in the story. So for those of you that are expecting this to take place during the events of Soul Calibur 2 and 3, the timeline does not match up exactly. In this timeline, in this new lore, this time is taking place during the events of that time, but the events are not correlated. For, I guess, the easiest example for me to say would be if you're looking at like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right? Or any time dilation that you're looking at in any kind of media. Whenever they go back to the past and change something, it doesn't change their future, it changes the future of the past that they changed, because you can't go back and change things from a set timeline. So it usually branches off. This is what we saw in Loki with the whole like time stream being changed consistently, and it wanted to be kept concise and consolidated. I know that's a really roundabout, convoluted way of saying it, but the timelines are not related to each other. You can almost think of them as separate universes within themselves. So, I mean, it takes something like the power of the astral chaos to be able to link them together, which links everything together. So for those of you thinking that like more characters like Patroclus and Pyrrha are going to appear from the timeline prior, that's not going to be the case. They're going to change Grow around completely, which I'm going to do a whole new story on. I don't think they're going to go with the whole stand thing like they did before. We're going to be seeing a lot of changes to things like this, and some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it. But we have to remember that what's important is the story. Obviously gameplay aspects as well, because at the end of the day this is a versus fighting game, and that is very important. But the narrative and the character build up is something that Soul Calibur is working really hard with Project Soul to be able to achieve one vision now. So hopefully this answered a bunch of questions, and hopefully this brought up new questions that we can talk about in the future. But let me know in the comment section down below, guys, what you think of today's video and what you think of the transference of what's going to happen in the next game. I will be talking about what new characters I think are going to show up and how they're going to play a role within the story. That's probably going to be my next video, just to take a little break from Demon Slayer while we're waiting for Akaza and Rui to show up. But with that being said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. Please subscribe and like the video. We have a Discord, so you can join and talk there. And as always, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.